Hi, happy summer, and welcome to the Board Wrap-Up Show with Dr. Pennington for the June 2015 Board of Education meeting. A short meeting as admitted by Dr. Pennington, so we've got a few things to talk about, but one of the things that the board did talk about in executive session was budget for the upcoming school year, and how'd that go, Dr. Pennington?
Well, it went probably like it's gone the last several years in that once again we have a year with no additional funding for our schools, and I guess the good news is that we're not getting a cut in funding like several other state agencies are. So we're going to have a standstill budget again because of some changes that have been made in the state funding formula. The fact that there's been a correction and now we're getting the state aid that we should get. That was enough of a revenue boost for us that even though we're going to be flat funded, we're still going to be able to replace all the positions that as we have teachers leave the district. In the last few years, as we've had folks leave, we've not replaced them. So we'll at least be able to replace everybody. That's assuming that we can find teachers to replace them. Phil, it's really, and I've said this several times, the last couple of programs we've had, it's a really interesting time in Oklahoma in that we still have less money per child to operate our schools than we had in 2008. I mean, you think about that. That's been almost 8 years that we've had a significant decrease in funding, almost $200, a little bit over $200 per child. And so we have that issue. And then the other issue we have is that even when we do have teaching positions open that we can fill with the budget that we have, we are very, very short of applicants. And it really is, as I think about the future of our schools and I think about, what's it going to be like in the next 5 years, I'm really concerned, more so than I've been at any time in my career, because we have we've got this kind of perfect storm in that we have fewer young people who are going into education for multiple reasons. Salary is a big part of that, but it's also the climate that our teachers teach in today with all the accountability and all the pressure that's put on them for results for students, which are, why would anybody be opposed to results? But those results are not meaningful results. They're not the kind of things. It's always been about what kind of students do we produce. And if you look at American education overall, what we've always produced are the most creative, the most independent, the most successful country in the world. And that success is driven by the students that come from our public schools. And we've done that without the current assessment system, without the current rules and regulations that we have in place today. And so we have that where fewer people are going into education. And then we have a whole lot of teachers that are in their late 50s and early 60s that are getting ready to retire. And they're going to retire. I mean, all of us like to think about the idea of retirement. And so we're going to have all these folks who are leaving. We have fewer people coming in. Student population is increasing as the baby boomers' grandchildren are entering school. And it's a perfect storm, and I don't know what's going to happen. I remember being as a kind of somebody in the middle of the baby boom. I remember being in elementary schools, being in a first grade classroom, and looking at those old class pictures, that we all have that we used to get, and you count those faces, and there's 31, 32 kids in a first grade classroom, and we went through that in the 60s. And I think we're headed back to that, where we're going to have huge class sizes, and not because that's what we want to do, not because we think that's the best way to educate kids, but because there's not teachers out there to fill the classrooms. And what's sad about that is some of that's nationwide, but we have a unique set of circumstances in Oklahoma. We've actually got a math position open. And we got an application the other day from a gentleman up in Nebraska, and his statement to us is, well, in Nebraska, for every teaching job there's 50 to 60 applicants. Well, for every teaching job in Oklahoma, you're lucky if there's 5. Now, will some of those people across the country come down to Oklahoma and go to work? There may be a few that do that, but they're not going to stay very long because, again, they're not coming here because we are the best paying state in our region. They're going to come here, get a couple of years of experience, and then leave. And I don't know. I'm very, very worried about that. Bottom line, we're going to have basically a flat budget next year. We hope to fill all the positions that we have. Unfortunately, we can't find enough teachers to help us fill those positions where we have large class sizes, and we've been advertising for that really since we found out in December that we had some new funding coming into the district. We hope to lower those class sizes, and as of right now, we've not been able to do that.
Along those same lines, I've got an interesting question that you may not be able to answer. Last year at this time, it seemed like there was a young lady from up north that came to teach in our schools and brought with her a friend. Are they staying or do they leave?
They're still here.
Okay, so that's kind of what you're talking about, I guess.
Right. So we brought some young people in from Indiana. We've hired a couple of Kansas teachers because the Kansas schools are in such disarray right now. We're one school district that's to our north. Every first year teacher was non-renewed. Wow. So again, as Kansas schools start cutting budgets, we may have some people that filter down to us. But again, Kansas is going to get that fixed. I mean, I don't know when that's going to happen, but they'll eventually get it fixed, and they'll eventually be paying $2,000 a year more than we do. Everybody in our region, everybody that touches us, pays more money than we do. And it's not $50 more a year or $100 more a year, but it's $1,000 a year or $2,000 a year. In the case of Texas, it's $4,000 and $5,000 a year. So, we don't have to pay what everybody else pays, but we have to be more competitive. And that's going to take a lot of soul searching by the legislature as they try to figure out how we solve the mess that we've created in Oklahoma as we continue to give tax cuts at a time when revenues drop. And or we can continue to give tax credits. I mean, it took us a lot of years to get ourselves into this situation. It's going to take a lot of political courage to get ourselves out of it.
As teachers and students broke for the summer holiday, the Oklahoma legislature ended their session in late May. In your mind, was there anything done this year in that 4-month period to help education by the legislature?
Well, they did 2 things that I think were important. One, they extended, we've had this controversy 2 years ago about this 3rd grade retention law, that if a student didn't pass a test, they were going to retain them for a year. You're going to disregard whatever a teacher had to say about that student's classroom performance all year long. And just a hard set rule, you don't pass a test, you're not going to go to the next grade. Which we don't do that in America. We've never done that in America where we've had these real set rules like that. And so we've got that kind of what I call a moratorium on that for another 3 years as we continue to try to work through that. What the legislature ought to do is repeal it. It's a bad law. It was not a very smart thing to do. But if they repealed it, they'd have to admit that they made a mistake. And the one thing I've noticed about the legislature is that they don't stand up and do that very often. That we made a mistake and we need to just abolish this law and go on. So my guess is that when we have a new governor in place who did not, stake her political reputation on this law, then it will probably go away. And then the other thing that the legislature did is we have a new teacher evaluation system that is supposed to use student test scores as a part of the teacher evaluation, and they delayed that implementation for a couple of years, the test score part. Again, what's happened is Oklahoma jumped on all these reforms before they were proven. And what's happened in the states that have implemented them, what they've shown is that they don't work. They create an additional level of paperwork. They create more bureaucracy. They take more staff time. They don't make teachers more professional. They make teachers burdened, and teachers decide to leave the profession. It makes it harder to recruit teachers into schools with high poverty because high poverty kids don't score as well on tests. So why would a teacher take a job in a high poverty school if they don't have to? And so it just has made everything, the things that we want to be focusing on, the places where we want our best teachers to be, we can't get them there because of the evaluation system, because it doesn't make sense for them to do that. So it's another bad reform. It's a leftover part of Janet Barisi's legacy. But the governor jumped into that too, and it was very well supported by the legislature. And again, they ought to drop it and move away from it, but they can't quite bring themselves to do that. So we're going to fiddle around with it for a couple more years and try to make it better. We're going to end up spending 10 years of school time, teacher time, student time, dealing with reforms that we all know don't work and need to be. And again, the people that advocated for those reforms, the think tanks and those people have already abandoned them and gone on to other things. They've recognized they don't work. They've come out publicly and said that. But unfortunately, it's hard for politicians to abandon that stuff.
And in fairness, Ms. Hoffmeister, 6 months into her job as our new superintendent, a summer to kind of get things organized. So there'll be some changes as we begin the next school year.
Yeah, and she's advocated for that. I mean, she wants to see those things change, but it's tough. I mean, it's just the system. When you think about it, when politicians have a very small window that they look through, and that window is when is the next election. So if you remember the House of Representatives, you've got a 2-year window, and you look at things and you're making decisions and you're trying to do what's best, what you think is best for the state, but at the same time, you're looking at re-election. So, you're looking at that next election. And so you want to make sure that you vote for stuff that you can go back home and tell your voters, hey, I did something. I passed a tax cut. I passed laws to help schools be better. And so, once it's passed, you're on to the next thing. You're on to whatever you're going to do the next 2 years. If you're a senator, it's the next 4. If you're governor, it's the next 4. So politicians have a very short memory. They did something, they passed it, now they've gone on to something else. And so they really don't like dealing with stuff that doesn't work. Because the reality is the campaign value of that initiative is gone by the next election. They voted for something, they did it, they went back, they campaigned, they said, hey, we voted for this reform. We've gotten reelected. Now we're on to something else. I don't want to go back and deal with something that I've already, and that's what happens with education policy, is because of those short windows, we pass a reform and then we're on to the next reform before this reform's been given a chance to work, because change takes time. And so that's what we get into here, and so it just makes it. And when you pass a law that's really bad and really does more harm than good, you can't tinker with it. You've got to get rid of it, and that's hard to do. They don't want to do that.
Is Woodland Elementary School going to be ready to go?
We're ready. We've already moved the faculty over for next year. Some of them actually, if you go into Woodlands, you actually see some rooms that are set up. Most of that will happen probably in July and August. We're in the process of moving Trout over. They should have their part of the move completed, and they'll start construction on Trout here within the next month.
Do you have enough information as we sit here in June to speculate about our enrollment numbers for next year? Are our schools growing or are we losing?
We're basically steady. Our end of the year numbers are going to be a little better than they were in May of 14. I'm not sure, or May of 15 final numbers will be better than May of 14 final numbers. I'm not sure if they'll be exactly up to where May of 13 is, but we're right about, when people ask me how many kids we have, I just say 5,400 students. Some years, we may be 52.9, we may be 53.8, we may be 54.10. But that's just the number I use. And when we plan for things, we plan for 5,400 kids, and we're going to continue to do that. The big drop that we saw, where we got down to about 5,000 students, we've definitely come up out of that low, and I think the only thing that's going to keep us from growing is the fact that we don't have spaces in our classrooms. We have some parents that have opted for some of the private schools here in town just because they don't want to be in a classroom with 28 other kids, and they have the financial resources to be able to go to the schools. If we had our class sizes back into the 20s, I think you'd see another 50 kids attending our schools. But I understand that. I mean, you get to a point where class size, if you have the financial means to have other options, you're willing to spend the money to do that. And it's a shame. I mean, we have a law in place. It's been in law since 1992 that says our class sizes ought to have 20 kids in a classroom. And the problem is the legislature since 2008 continues to suspend that law and continues not to enforce it, which takes the political pressure off of them to give us the funding we need to meet those guidelines. Because if they were penalizing Ponca City because we can't meet class sizes, because they don't give us enough money to do that, I think the public outcry would be so large that it actually might cost a politician their job the next time that we have an election.
Wow. We had a great graduating class this year, a large class. Anything that you wanted to talk about before we let you go?
I think the main thing is just how appreciative we are in this community and all the great things that that we have. It's been interesting. We've had several teachers that have left us over the last 5 years that have come back, and some of left for various reasons. Sometimes it was family related. Sometimes it was the grass is greener somewhere else. And just the things they've told us about how much they appreciate working in the district, the level of professionalism, the support of the community is something that really sets Ponca City aside. And because of that support and that continued support, we're in the process of putting together a bond issue, and you'll hear some more about that probably after the July meeting. But we're going to ask our community probably in October to once again invest in our community, invest in our young kids. And this is going to be a bond issue that is a lot more focused on core co-curricular activities, whether it's a facility for our fine arts program, a recommitment to our athletic programs, and so we're going to ask that of our community to bring our facilities for our co-curricular programs up to the same standards that the students in the suburban Tulsa and Oklahoma City areas have. And I hope that our community is willing to do that. It'll be a big investment, but I think like other things we've done, there are things that'll be long lasting and will serve the needs of this district, of these kids in our district well into the next century. So again, we hope that our community, as we get closer, we'll have more details about it. I'm excited about it. I'm excited because I think it's something that can really give us that next boost up as we go into this. We try to be competitive in everything that we do with our peer districts.
Dr. Pennington, thanks for your time, and that is the June Board Wrap-Up Show with Dr. Pennington.